Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Hello everybody. Cheap Porsches, do they really exist? After all, you can buy one easily enough, but we all know it's the running of the thing where it gets really expensive. And so, after a decade of telling all of you to stop worrying and to learn to love the bargain bin Porsche, I have put my money where my mouth is and bought last year what was at the time the cheapest Porsche on sale in all of Britain that was still technically roadworthy. And in this video, I will share with you my results. Have I been kidding all of us this whole time? Or is this really the best bargain in all of motoring? Enjoy. As a Brit born at the end of the 1980s, I was raised with the commonly held belief that Germany built the best cars in the world. And at the time, there was likely a lot of truth to it. My father had an E36 BMW M3. Mercedes were building the mighty W140 S-Class. Audi, the incredible D2 S8, and Porsche was still carrying on with the fabulous, over-engineered and rather old-school air-cooled 911. But as time marched on, we began to realise these were, sure, very good cars, but also very complicated. And today, at 30 or 40 years old, they aren't the easiest to live with. And so, if you want to buy something from that time, which might actually be reliable, there's only one place you want to look: Japan. There is an old saying that goes, the Japanese don't invent anything, but they have perfected everything. Now, while I don't believe that is entirely true, when it comes to the world of the automobile, there is something to it. After all, let's look at what they were building in the 1990s. And there we had a selection of vehicles that could do anything and everything of Western automobiles, but at a lower price and with better reliability. After all, we all knew that a well-piloted 355 would never be able to get away from a Subaru Impreza on a country road. Meanwhile, the Lexus LS showed the Mercedes S-Class and the BMW 7 Series a thing or two about luxury. And of course, the Mazda MX-5 was the Lotus Elan that Lotus could just never build. But when it comes to buying Japanese cars today, there's a big issue, which is the fact that market has now split in two. Once affordable cars are now rather expensive, in some cases being more money than the European alternatives they were pitched against. An NSX is not cheap, nor is a Supra, a Skyline GTR, or an RX-7. On the other side of things then, the more commonly available cars, such as your MR2 or MX-5, well, many of them have simply vanished, and those remaining often fall into the category of, you think it's a good idea, but soon as you get it onto your MOT tester's ramp, you realise you are in for a bad day indeed. And look, I love myself a good piece of European exotica, and I've had the pleasure of driving a great number of Ferraris, Lamborghinis and McLarens. I've made many videos trying to explain them and to defend them to those who just don't get them. But the truth is, anywhere this side of a racetrack or the Autobahn, 500 or 600 horsepower is simply going to get you into trouble quicker. Out to there, you just don't need it. And that's where the Porsche comes in, because these are cars that are built generally quite well. Let's ignore the engines for a moment, shall we? They are decent looking things, if not as stunning as their Italian cousins. But they drive superbly, they are generally easy to get bits for, there are dealers everywhere, and the engines, when they work, are far more interesting than those in, say, an MX-5. And let's be honest here, old cars from the 1990s are going to cost you money, so if you're going to spend a lot of money on a 30-year-old sports car, surely you'd rather spend some money on a 30-year-old Porsche rather than a 30-year-old Toyota. But is it really that simple? Can you actually go out there and buy yourself a Porsche for a few grand and actually have the experience you want and not the nightmare you've been warned about? Well, let's introduce you to mine. This is my 2001 986 Porsche Boxster S, a member of the first generation of the Boxster family. A car introduced, are you ready for it? 30 years ago now, back in 1996. And when it landed, it did so with a fair degree of controversy. But as time has gone on, I think we've all learned to love the Boxster. Except for those of you who haven't, and you probably haven't clicked on this video. But when the car arrived, it came with a 2.5 litre flat 6 naturally aspirated engine, making just 204 PS, which was actually less than its outgoing predecessor, the 968, which had an inline 4 displacing 3 litres. In 2000, they fixed things somewhat, introducing a 2.7 litre engine for the base model, and this, the S, with a 3.2 litre engine, making 250 horsepower. It also comes with a 6-speed manual as standard, making the car good for a claimed 0 to 62 of 5.9 seconds and a top speed of 162 mph. Now, these early cars were fairly Spartan in a lot of ways. This one doesn't even have a glove box, being a pre-facelift. But it's also fairly light, weighing in at just 1,350 kilos. Now, that might be a fair bit more than your average MR2 or MX-5, but it's also 100 kilos lighter than the modern-day Spider RS. And this particular example is very well specified, is in the launch specification of silver over terracotta leather interior. There's plenty of it too, though in typical Porsche fashion, they haven't really quite understood leather and they've just glued it to the plastic. There are also pieces of aluminium trim, an embossed Boxster script in the door handle, a Bose stereo, and even a trip computer, all of which would have been optional at the time this car was made. And should this video inspire you to take the plunge and begin your own journey into the weird and wonderful world of Porsche ownership, check out Renzone. It's a new site that has been built by enthusiasts for enthusiasts to buy and sell anything Porsche related, from cars to collectibles. They've got everything from wheels to watches, and for private sellers, it's entirely free to use. It's a great website. They've already partnered with a number of Porsche independents and specialists here in Great Britain and across the world. And so, if you're looking for something to buy for yourself or perhaps somebody else, please do check it out, because with the lower fees they charge, it means everybody gets a better deal. And I want to say a really big thank you to them for sponsoring some of the Porsche content on the channel this year. Now, this car is no garage queen. It's got over 180,000 miles on it, but it still looks fantastic. And that's got a lot to do with the fact I bought it from my good friend George, of George and Caitlin, formerly regional organiser for Region 2 of the Porsche Club of Great Britain. Region 2 being the largest singular region by geographical area anyway, and that's the north of Scotland. I've been doing stuff with those guys for a long time now, and they've become excellent friends. They picked this up a little while back. Previously, he had a 2.7 litre Cayman, which in Porsche speak was a 987. That's the generation after. There isn't a Cayman in this shape. But they had to downsize a little bit, got married, congratulations guys, and this car was at their wedding because they still wanted a bit of that Porsche goodness, and having sampled the other Boxster I have in the fleet, a 2.7 litre slightly later car, they thought, you know what, actually, they'd kind of overlooked the Boxster and the 986. Getting a taste of it made them realise it's a great car. So they bought it, drove it, enjoyed it, used it, and most importantly, looked after it, doing a number of regular maintenance items and repairs too. To give you an example of the kind of things George has done to this car, at one point it needed the manifolds replacing, and though he does a lot of his work himself, George realised on a car like this, that's a big job that requires proper tools and a ramp. So he negotiated with a Porsche centre up in Scotland to do the work. And even with every piece of discount and goodwill he could muster, that was still a £1,500 job. The car he paid, I think, 5 or 6 grand for, and spent a fair bit on it in that time. And I got it for £2,000. So, what's going on? Has he got himself into some horrible gambling debt and I'm helping him pay off the loan shark? Have I got some incriminating pictures of him and a salmon that I may or may not return now I've got his car? No, unfortunately, the catch is more mechanical in nature. See, while doing his regular oil change on the car, George always makes sure to inspect the oil filter. And when he did the last one, a load of plastic came out. The likely cause, the timing chain tensioners in the car were breaking up. And so he thought, right, that's that. See, it's not an impossible thing to fix. These earlier cars don't have the problematic engine of the later one. The likes of bore scoring and so on, though they're not immune to it, they don't tend to suffer it anywhere near as much as, say, the 3.4 of the later cars. But he'd already spent a lot of money on the car, and he is a realist. So he came to me and said, James, I'm thinking of selling the Boxster. While all of this was happening, I was collecting cars for my track day enterprise, and I thought, you know what, I've already got my little Rover 100, I've already got a Mini, it'd be nice to have something a little more powerful and rear-wheel drive to mix things up a little bit. And I said, how much do you want? He said £2,000. I said, sold. So we put the car on a trailer and had it sent down to my specialists, William Francis. Now, normally I would always assume the worst when it comes to buying a cheap car of any description, and when it's a cheap Porsche, you have to be extra suspicious. But as this was coming from George, there are a whole bunch of things I just didn't need to worry about, and the initial inspection confirmed that. I already knew this was a cat clean car. It's never been written off, nor does it appear ever to have been in a significant accident. There is virtually no rust under it, and that alone means I've kinda got my money's worth. Why did he sell it so cheap? Well, it wasn't because I'm his mate. He was happy to sell it to me. But the truth is, try and sell a Boxster of this age with high mileage that's got an engine issue, well, people are going to assume you're lying and it's really a lot more serious than it is. And, well, they're not going to want to give you anything. Plus, George was very well aware of the fact and communicated to me the car would still need some other things too. And funnily enough, when the car arrived at the specialist, they told me the engine was really the one thing I probably didn't need to worry about. Should you be on the hunt for a Porsche specialist, by the way, I cannot recommend William Francis highly enough. I've known the guys there, well, in one case, for more than 20 years, because Chief Mechanic Sam, I actually went to school with. As teenagers, we used to ride around town on our mopeds. Charlie, the chap behind the business, well, I've known him for over 15 years, and he has lived and breathed Porsche for nearly his entire life. There are few places I'd rather take a car, because they're the kind of business who, when something needs doing, they will not cut a corner. But if something doesn't need doing, they'll tell you that too. They're very honest, and that in of itself is a rarity. They're very reasonably priced too. And so, what did they have to say about this car? Well, when it came to the engine, they said, look, let's do another oil change, see just how bad it is, and then potentially put on a new tensioner. The simple fact is, this engine might still have tens of thousands of miles left in it. And when it does begin to fail, you can pick up a used, much lower mileage engine for only a couple of grand. So really, it's a lot more economical to just change the engine rather than fix this. That being said, I am the sort of person that considers that a little bit wasteful. So if this car is good to me over the next few months and doesn't catastrophically fail in that time, I think I might just get this fixed up, because I'd like to see just how far we can take this engine. But they told me for now, leave it. I've got bigger problems. And the main one, the suspension. It wasn't really broken, but all of it was past its prime. And with this car being bound for track duty, that wasn't a problem. I intended to replace it anyway. And one of the great things with these cars is that not only are they relatively common, they also have huge parts commonality with not just the 996, which, by the way, is effectively the same car from here forwards. Upset 911 owners that quite a bit. It wasn't until the 981 where the Boxster actually got its own doors. But you can even swap parts with a 987, 997, and I'm told later 911s still use some of the same components. Because of this, there are lots of options and they're reasonably priced. And my go-to for much of it is Design 911, because they'll sell you everything from a genuine Porsche part to their own brand they call OE Match, built to effectively the regular standard but at a lower price, and many of the aftermarket companies you've heard of, Bilstein, Eibach, Meili, so on and so forth. And with this car, I sourced things from a variety of different places. The suspension I actually got directly from KW. I called them up and said, right, I've got a Boxster, it's going to be a track car, what do you recommend? And they said, our Club Sport kit, which we don't do for a Boxster. Yeah, we only do the V3, it's the next best thing. So I said, okay, all right, let's get that sent over. I then went to Design 911 and ordered from them just about everything else. And I love dealing with those guys because they recently were the subject of a management buyout, which means the people that worked for the company now own it. And I really like that. We're not dealing with some big faceless American firm. So if you want some bits, please give them a call, tell them what you need, and tell them I sent you. Don't know if it'll make a difference. They're not sponsoring this video or anything like that, but they were very nice to work with and they've helped me out. And from them, I got all of the suspension arms, the drop links, the track rods, and a set of uprated H&R anti-roll bars. Now, all of this was ordered way back in November and should have been here in plenty of time for something very special. For I was invited to go out in April to the Nürburgring, and I had been offered 2 free days of tuition at arguably the world's most famous racetrack. I've only been around the ring once, 20 years ago, as a passenger with Sabine. And I had said, well, you know what, if that's all I ever get to do there, I'll be happy. But when someone says to you, do you want 2 free days of tuition? You don't really say no. And so the plan was to get this car built and revealed in time for that, and do all of that stuff and show you lots of cool content of me driving around the ring. Well, 'twas not to be. The suspension was supposed to take 8 weeks to arrive. Instead, it took closer to 20, which meant I had to cancel going out to the ring. Now, I was tempted to take another car, but you don't want to turn up on a track day with a car that you haven't tested thoroughly. You definitely don't want to go to a foreign country, to the world's most demanding circuit, in a car you haven't tested properly. And so hopefully, at some point in the future, this car will do a lap of the ring. At this point, I am determined. But beyond being annoyed with the situation and waiting, there wasn't really anything I could do to speed the situation along. Frustratingly, Design 911 had been very quick with getting all of their parts to me. The majority of the stuff I ordered landed within about 36 hours. There have only been a couple of occasions the whole time I've dealt with them, for this car and others, where I've had to wait more than about 2 or 3 working days. And when there is going to be a wait, usually you'll know from the website because they tell you if something is or isn't in stock, and they'll phone me and tell me, look, you've got a choice, you can either change the part you've ordered or simply wait the week it might take for them to get it from their warehouse in Europe. Yes, they have a warehouse in Europe as well because they sell parts over there too. So if you're watching from Europe, you need some stuff, yeah, give them a ring. But there were other things we did need on the car too, including some tyres. It already came with a fresh set of fronts, but it actually needed the rears more. So I bought a pair of Michelin Pilot Sport 4s. You can't get 4S in this size, and I'd love your suggestions for more track-friendly rubber in these sizes. Now the rears are 255 40 17 and the fronts are 205 50 17. Now I think it might actually be easier just to keep these tyres on these wheels and to get a whole different set of wheels and tyres for track day duty, and that'd make some sense. But I'd love your suggestions for what the best options are on a car like this. 17 inches today, it's no longer a big wheel size, so a lot of manufacturers just don't bother making their better tyres in that size. Hey ho. And all that waiting meant not only did I miss my date at the Nürburgring, I also missed my very own Porsche track day. I hosted one at Blyton Park in conjunction with the lovely people at Porsche in the Park. It was a fantastic event. We sold it out, 48 cars, and everybody had a brilliant time. Usually I run things with half that number of cars, so I was a little concerned how everyone would get on. But they were impeccable. I had a great time. So much so, we're hosting another one in August. And this time, the Boxster will be ready. You hear that? You will be ready for this one. And the list price for it is £199. But if you use the code PITP26, you'll get 29 quid off. Come and join me on a track day with Porsche types for 170 quid. Can't say fairer than that. But, of course, this being an old Boxster, it wasn't done with my wallet yet. Oh no. We presented the car for MOT and it sprang a leak. Not of oil, not of coolant, instead of exhaust fumes. Yeah. Now, when people talk about issues with old Porsches, very often they'll cite engine problems. It's funny, isn't it? Everyone talks about Ferrari as the brand that builds terribly unreliable cars, yet Porsche go for over a decade making chocolate engines, and somehow people still worship at the altar as if they are the best engineers on planet Earth. Thing is though, not every Porsche engine is actually that bad. The exhausts though are an issue. On anything mid or rear engined, after 5 years, they're pretty crusty. After 25 years, well, it's all one big solid piece of manky metal. Now, the manifolds we know had already been done. The back box on this had also been replaced with a Dansk Sport one. Sounds fantastic. And that's because the back boxes on these fall apart for fun. Charlie has at the back of his workshop a pile yay high of old Porsche exhausts that have just fallen apart. My friend Chris bought a Boxster many years younger than this, and the exhaust on that was held together by the rust. Anyway, the back box here is still fine, but what wasn't were the cats. And what's really frustrating about that is the fact when George got this car, it had some sports ones on, but they struggled to pass emissions. So he purchased a pair of second-hand, genuine catalysts for it. And those were basically like a sieve. It was pouring smoke out of everywhere you could imagine. Back to Design 911 I went, and again they've got a few different choices, but I went with their OE equivalent 400 cell cats. And those are surprisingly cheap, just £200 a side, to which we needed to add a quartet of O2 sensors, some heat shields, some clamps, and gaskets and other sundries. That was another near £1,000 or so of bits that I really didn't want to have to spend, but the car needed it. And finally, with that, a week or so ago, the car got an MOT. Huzzah! But how much has my £2,000 Boxster actually cost me? So, piece of paper in hand time. The KW V3 suspension, that comes in at about £2,700. The other suspension components around about the £2,000 mark. The exhaust, that was actually about £800. The tyres, I spent 300 quid, and the other two I got with the car, so I didn't have to spend on those. And the remaining parts and the labour from William Francis, that came in at just under £2,500. All in, getting this car right has cost me about 8,000 quid. on top of a purchase price of £2,000. So this 180,000 mile, 25-year-old Boxster owes me about 10 grand. And it's still not done. The aircon doesn't work, though that we hope is just a leak. We have found one, it's a big one, and if it's just that pipe we need replacing, I'll be a happy man. We also haven't done all that much in terms of track prep. Yes, the suspension is sorted, but we do need to upgrade those tyres at some point. The brakes, again, though Charlie's advice has been right, take it on track, see just how bad they are, and we've got options. Same goes for the cooling system. We're going to want to put probably an extra radiator in it, though for now, I'm not too worried. It's summer, it's hot. In fact, it's as hot as Britain ever gets. So if it can survive this, it'll be okay. But I want to make sure it can survive anything. And yeah, it's going to be a fun journey. It's going to be a fun time. I've got 3 days back to back up at Brighton Park coming, and this car is going to get used an awful lot. I also feel like I should point out I didn't need to spend as much on this car as I have, particularly in terms of the suspension. There were a few components that you could have gotten away with leaving, and when it comes to the dampers and springs themselves, well, there were also much more reasonably priced options. But I had a specific goal in mind with this car, and I wanted it to be the best that it could. And yes, we've done a lot to this car, but if we'd done the same job on other cars, it would have cost a lot more. Let's face it, all of the components I bought for the brakes on this car cost the same as, well, about 2 ceramic discs for, well, anything with ceramics on, really. In fact, some cars are 1 ceramic disc. Compared to Ferrari parts prices, yeah, they're reasonable. Compared to Mazda parts prices, actually some of them are still quite comparable. In other cases, sure, they will be a little bit more money, but it's a Porsche, not a Mazda, and there was basically no rust under this. It's in really, really good nick. Had you gone and bought yourself an MX-5 for 2 or 3 grand, I more or less guarantee you it would have been rusty, and fixing that can be a lot of money. In fact, it could have been nearly as much as doing this if you then chuck in paintwork and everything else. Cars are an expensive hobby. There is every chance you could buy an old E46, not necessarily even an M3, and still have to spend this amount of money. It's easy to forget how old these cars are. The youngest of all the 986s is now over 20. And when cars get to that age, if they've seen any kind of use, they will need things doing. And the truth is, you could have gone and bought an example from the top end of the market at £10,000 to £15,000 and still had to do some of this stuff. For me, if you're going to buy a car to keep it long term, it almost makes more sense to buy one that's cosmetically decent, but, you know, mechanically needs a few things, and just get it right. After all, replacing a suspension component which is kind of past its prime costs you the same as replacing one that's totally knackered. There's not really a difference. And at least here I have a car with a great history folder, in good condition, with fine provenance. I'm only, I think, the 6th owner of the thing. And for a car of this type, that's really, really good. The £10,000 question, though, has it been worth it? Well, there's only one place we can find that out. On track. But as I don't have one of those here, let's go for the second best. The road. I'm sure many of you watching know this isn't the only Porsche project I've got on the go, for I'm also building a 987 Cayman S, and that's got a very special engine in it, a 4.1 litre conversion courtesy of the good people at Hartech, and I'm afraid I am sitting in one of the very reasons that hasn't been done. Because this has cost a lot more than I thought it was going to, but it also felt like this was a much more achievable project. Now this is done, I'm going to focus on that a lot more and hopefully get that car on the road this year as well. But having the two has been really quite refreshing, because that one is built as a pure road car. Yes, I probably will take it on track at some point, but I'm not really fussed whether it's any good on track or not. See, I'm of the opinion that everything you do to make a car better on track, generally speaking, will make it worse on the road. See, what is here perfectly damp suspension, there is far too soft and wallowy. That being said, this car, which of course I've built with a focus on track, actually isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was expecting a real, properly crashy ride, and I'd have forgiven that. Now, I've neglected to ask Charlie how he and Sam have set the suspension up here, but one thing I can tell you is it's low, really low. Now, at the back they say it's set the same as the regular sports suspension heights, but the front, well, I can't believe it is. Those arches have some serious tuck going on, and the mud flaps, if you want to call them that, at the front of the car, well, they're only sat about 4 centimeters maybe off the floor. I have never owned a car that scrapes anywhere near as much as this one does. Multi-story car parks? Forget it. Minor inclines, crikey, they're bad enough. And with it having been a little while since I've driven a 986 Boxster, as soon as you sit back in the thing, you're reminded of some of its many quirks. The seating position is unusual. This one has the sport seats, another thing I might replace at some point soon, put some proper buckets in it. I am also considering at some point putting a cage in the back, though unfortunately here, that will involve a bit of a compromise. See, to do that, you have to take the roof mechanism out, which means you can run the car then either as a hard top or as an open top with a no weather cover. In Britain, that's risky. And I will admit, there is a part of me that would kind of feel bad about doing that, because this is in really, really good condition. It's a very well preserved car, and it's a lot of fun to drive. Now, in typical Porsche fashion, the gearing is too long, but this 3.2 litre engine has a surprising amount of punch in the mid-range. Likely helped by the fact, much like the 996, the pedal in here is set up in a very non-linear way. You get a surprising amount of response from it in the first couple of centimetres of travel, but then you realise what it's done, well, it's just given you everything it could at the top of the pedal. I don't like that. The noise too. Oh, that's perfectly judged. Again, this is a track car, and I don't like cars to be overly raucous anyway, but I want something that can pass any track day noise limit, and this one will, but it also sounds great. In here, with the roof down, it's got just the right amount of volume. When you're cruising on the motorway, you basically don't hear it, but when you want to have fun, you do, and it's a nuanced sound which builds through the rev range. Peak here, by the way, is at just about 7,000. It also has a lovely little burble and crackle when you lift off, and it's full of personality. And this is with the 400 cell cats. I'm kind of glad I didn't go for the sportier ones. I was tempted, and I'm sure it'd sound even better again, but that's not the point of this. I need it to be usable, pass noise tests, and just work. I also want it to be able to pass an MOT, because track car though it may be, I will use it on the road, certainly this summer. And I personally believe asking an MOT tester to pass a car you know doesn't make the regs is not just illegal, but it's morally wrong too. And when a car already sounds this good, it's entirely unnecessary. Now, it's an odd engine this, because it feels like it's got two peaks. The first at just over 3,000 RPM, and then there is a temptation to change by about 4. Feels like the thing's starting to lose interest. But trust me, stick with it, and from 5 it develops a second wind and will then go really well all the way to that 7,000 RPM red line. This is also an engine that I know benefits from high octane fuel. When we were over in Germany with my buddy Chris's Boxster, that also has the 3.2, just a later version, on regular either 95 or 98, yeah, it's okay, but the top end just doesn't have that zing you want. When we put 102 in it, well, it just came alive. Felt like we'd remapped it. Now, in truth, on track, I'm not sure this is actually going to be any quicker than the Mini. Despite a power deficit, the Mini, of course, is a little bit lighter, but somewhere like Blyton, it's a technical track, and this just doesn't have anywhere near enough in terms of a power-to-weight advantage to make a big difference. What this is going to provide me, though, is a very different driving experience. First off, it feels so much more exotic. With that soundtrack, it's real proper baby supercar stuff. The gear shift in here isn't the best when it's cold. Third and fourth can be a little bit crotchety, but when you get used to it, it's fine. I was tempted by a short shifter, but I think it just might make things worse. I was also tempted by a lightweight flywheel, but again, that could sacrifice road drivability. However, as and when the car does need a clutch, that might be something that I do. And so, should you buy a cheap Porsche? Well, I think yes is the answer, but with a bit of an asterisk by it. Know what you're doing, know what you're getting into. Do not go and buy one of these for 3 or 4 grand and nothing left over, because it will need things. Go into it instead with a budget of maybe, say, 6 to 10. Buy a car, leave yourself plenty to fix what needs fixing, drive it, enjoy it, and then treat it as a kind of rolling restoration. With the earliest of these being 30 years old now, I think they're beginning to enter the realms of not just modern classic, but classic full stop. Might be painful to think, I know, but if it were 2000, you'd definitely call a car from 1970 a classic, wouldn't you? I think the real issue in terms of perception is just the fact that, well, for a lot of people, this car has everything you need. You get in it, you turn the key, it runs, it drives, it has aircon. Obviously this one doesn't work, but it does. You can put a double-din head unit in here, as George did. You can buy the Porsche official one as well, which is all right when it works, but it's not very reliable. And though in some ways, I know a lot of people consider this something of a low point for Porsche, actually, it also did a huge amount right. Like, I owned this car's immediate predecessor, the 968. It's a very, very cool car in of itself, but that was a car from the 70s underneath, and it felt it. It's a very different thing, granted, front-engined 2+2. This is a strict mid-engine 2-seater, but it's an epic piece of kit. These cars are also a great reminder of the many things Porsche have lost. The steering feel here, it's beautiful. It's light, yet it's feelsome. It's got a nice turn in, but it isn't hyperactive. The brakes too, they're beautifully judged. Actually, in here, some of the best in any 986 or 996 I've driven. It's a very old school mechanical car, feels properly analog. I look forward to exploring the limits of it. On the road, they don't feel like they're too high, but it's also a car that talks to you, it works with you. It might be one of the cheapest cars I've ever bought, but it is one of the best. And so, with that being said, I want to say a big thank you to everybody involved in this build, to George for selling me the car, to William Francis for working on it, and to KW and Design 911 for helping source and supply all of the many parts. And last but not least, to you for watching and supporting me in this venture. If you want to come and see the car in action, please pop along to my Porsche track day on August the 10th. You don't need to pay anything to come along, say hello and spectate. We'd love to see you. And with that, bye-bye.